Hello, everyone. Hi. So this panel discussion is going to be the end of today in Al-Oja stage. This panel discussion aims to explore innovative methodologies for documenting and preserving cultural heritage, with a special focus on both tangible and intangible aspects. For our moderator today, I'm going to be welcoming onto the stage Dr. David Awad, an associate professor and director of the Institute of Environmental Studies and Research at the Lebanese American University.
Welcome to this afternoon session where we will be discussing the cultural landscape from Beirut to Diriyah. Allow me to welcome our speakers today from Lebanese American University and from MIT. I will start with my colleagues from Lebanese American University, Ms. Rula Khouri. She's an associate professor at the Lebanese American University. She holds a master's degree in urban planning from Harvard University and a bachelor's degree in architecture with a minor in political science from the American University of Beirut. She has received numerous academic honors, including the Peter Cook Honorary Award and the Azar and Aaron Awards. Her research explores topics such as the impact of material globalization in the Middle East, the representation of capital in urban spaces, affordable housing solutions, and alternative public spaces. Doctor. Our second speaker from Lebanese American University as well, Dr. Karine El-Taif. She's an assistant professor at the Lebanese American University in Beirut with a PhD in geography and spatial planning from the University of Montpellier and INRAE, and master's degree in urban planning from AUB and agricultural engineering. Her research focuses on the interaction between space and nature in urban areas. She also works as a consultant in agriculture, landscape design, urban planning, and environmental projects. Dr. El-Taif. Our third guest speaker, Ms. Daniela Maamere. She's a lead researcher and project manager at MIT Future Heritage Lab, an architect, urban planner, and research dedicated to designing sustainable communities that celebrate cultural heritage. Her expertise encompasses projects across the globe as a principal investigator and project manager at MIT's Future Heritage. Our first lecture will be of mud, the role of mud as Dr.
Okay, hello everybody. The title of our presentation is Beyond Materiality, Mud as a Living Material in Heritage Preservation. I will start with the picture of Wadi Hanifa, the longest and most important valley near Riyadh, to highlight its importance as a natural and cultural landscape that has informed the shaping of Saudi towns and traditional architecture. And mud that we will be speaking about in our presentation has been historically, and it's still up until now, sourced locally. And the palm groves that we see in the picture have supplied the fronds that used to be used in the traditional built-up structures. So now I will introduce the topic. In an era marked by growing environmental consciousness, local traditional construction materials are being revisited in search of alternatives that would be more sustainable and present a lower ecological footprint. Mud is among those materials, and it holds a prominent place, having been historically widespread and having constituted an integral part of the landscapes of the East, even more those of Arab cities. Diriyah, where we gather today, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site in the kingdom, is one of those regions where building was mud-based until 2 to 3 decades ago. And as you may already know, as part of its Vision 2030, the kingdom has already embarked on several development plans in the region, envisioning the creation of a new mud city. So I'm quoting Al-Mugrin. Through this initiative, it aims to achieve sustainable growth by promoting local traditions and raising awareness on heritage and cultural values. So building on this recent interest in handmade buildings and the use of local materials in contemporary construction, recent research on mud has primarily focused on re-examining its mechanical and geological properties, as well as its potential to contribute to sustainable architecture. However, we've noticed that there's a gap in research as per the role of local materials as carriers of local knowledge and culture. So this gap forms the raison d'être, the basis of our research and presentation today, which will explore mud not merely as a construction material, but as what we term a dynamic living material. So this designation stems not only from its earthly composition, but also from its profound cultural significance. So now I leave the floor to my colleague, Professor Rula Khouri, who will tell us more about this exploration.
Thank you, Karine. I would like to start my short intervention with a quote by Master Architect Hassan Fathi. Still not moving. So build your architecture from what is beneath your feet, says Hassan Fathi. And I'm starting this in order to shed light on the importance of the place and its nature, and also its local material. So mud is integral to our culture and to our cultural identity, at least in our region. And thus, it offers a very important insight on sustainability and also for heritage preservation projects. While it is often viewed through the lens of its geotechnical properties, its socio-cultural attributes are vital for supporting local cultures and its continuity. Our study will focus on its cultural significance rather than these physical and technical properties. We will be exploring three main aspects. One, it is the semiotics of mud. Two are the sensorial aspect or sensorial dimension of mud. And three, the community engagement that is triggered by mud construction. Right. So another quote by Umberto Eco: languages are not given to us, they are built by us. We can interpret the world through the signs we create, says Umberto Eco. And so basically what that means is that this exploration and the semiotic exploration of signs and symbol could be considered as integral to our understanding of culture. And thus, they shape how individuals view the world and view their environment. Each mud building tells a story of its inhabitants, values, struggles, and aspirations, creating a rich visual tapestry of cultural heritage. Mud architecture embodies meanings, and these meanings are strongly embedded in this culture. Its revival could counter, in many ways, globalization, which often dilutes local identities. As communities faces modernization and environmental change, the significance of mud architecture as a vessel of cultural identity becomes increasingly vital, reinforcing the need for its preservation and appreciation. Another aspect that we would like to tackle is the sensorial, basically, qualities that contribute to the significance of mud in heritage preservation and significantly affect the atmosphere and the spatial experiences of the built environment. The tactile warmth, malleability, and aesthetic appeal of mud create immersive spaces that resonate with inhabitants and visitors alike. The process of applying and working with mud also engages the senses in a participatory manner. This hands-on interaction allows individuals to connect with the material on a personal level, enhancing their relationship with space. So again, quoting or following recommendations from architect Hassan Fathi, who highlights the importance of manual skills in building with earth, he notes that the act of creating with mud fosters pride and ownership among artisans and residents. So when touched, mud can feel cool in warm climates and warm in cooler conditions, effectively regulating the microclimate of a space. This highlights that mud possesses the power to evoke emotional responses by the user. Visually, mud architecture presents a rich palette of colors and forms that vary based on the geographic location and the soil, so again evoking feelings and the connection to the land. And finally, the acoustic properties of mud contribute to the sensory atmosphere of a space. The thick walls of mud structures can absorb sound, creating a calm and peaceful environment, reproducing the tranquility and intimacy of old mud settlements. So we'd like to end here this short intervention with the commitment and the engagement of the community through mud construction. So mud architecture, with its communal construction processes and local material use, embodies the collective identity of the community. It manifests the social structures, rituals, and shared experiences that have also evolved over time. Mud is often described as a living substance due to its dynamic properties and the ongoing relationship it establishes with its environment and inhabitants alike. Unlike static material, such as concrete or steel, mud structures require community involvement before the construction starts, and it continues afterwards, requiring regular maintenance and care. These three aspects set the stage for a deeper discussion about mud as a material and as a living, what we describe as a living material. So a discussion about a case study, Beit Isa, will further elaborate on these three important aspects. And this is where I would like to give the floor to David, my colleague, to introduce the case study. Thank you.
Thank you, Rula. So as Rula mentioned, mud, we do not consider mud as a regular construction material. It kind of, talks to people and people interact with it. So in order to make this, in order to highlight what we are talking about, we decided to talk about a case study, a project that I have been fortunate enough to follow as an observer rather than an architect or a planner. It is in Riyadh, it is in old Arga, here in between the Safarat area and Bujairi, the old Arga area. This is a story that talks about a man that I will call Badr for today. This man had a dream to revive his ancestor village, a cluster, where his granddad or his grandfather used to live since 1873. Unfortunately, this cluster was demolished after the people who used to live there, the many families who used to live there, left it for other areas, such as the new Arga and other areas in Riyadh. And this became almost a no man's land for a long time. And this person, Badr, used to pass by every day next to this old Arga. Used to think, I should do something here, because his grandfather's house was demolished, and there was still few clusters, maybe a couple of dozens of clusters that were still there, small houses, completely demolished by time and by dust and the erosion of time. So this is the area where we have the old Arga Park. We have, of course, on the northern side, the Prince Mishal Belaziz highway. It's an area called Wadi Marfoud. It is the old Arga. We have the Jerusalem Museum, cemetery right on the southern side. We have the Arga Gardens. We have a very old Arga mosque right at the edge of the site. And this cluster, as you can see in this aerial view, it holds about maybe 18 or 19 old houses. Most of them were completely demolished. And this dream of Badr was to actually, 8 years ago, when he was passing by his car, he saw written, hand sprayed on one of the buildings there, for sale. So it was one of his ancestors' houses, but the house wasn't there anymore. So he decided to buy the closest house that was close to his grandfather's area. So he bought the house, which was completely demolished, and he started slowly, almost 3 years ago, rebuilding. He started using the existing mud as a material, as a living material, as Rula and Karine were saying, because people were helping him. There was no architect in charge. There were very few consultants. It started as almost an act of therapy, because for him it was important to see the material, how it would work. So he started by building walls, started by cleaning the area, and slowly the old house of his grandfather started taking shape. And the funny thing about the story that after 6 or 7 months, the neighbors that completely left the area started passing by, and they saw that something was happening in this area. So they stopped and they asked this guy, said, "What are you doing? Why are you building here? This area is completely devastated. Nobody will come here anymore." And he told them his story. And after a while, they got completely excited about the idea of doing something. So they said, "Please, you fix our..." He said, "Okay, give me tafweed." I don't know how you say tafweed in Arabic, you know. "And please, can you fix our house the way you are doing?" So people came together. They're starting getting the mud from Wadi Hanifa. This is very close to the Wadi Hanifa, because still the material is still there. They got a structural consultant to deal with a structure that was completely wasted, but in order to make these houses work, they needed to put at least some metal structure. They needed to add some CMU at some point, but in order to keep the spirit of this place, the use of mud was there. There was no plans because they kept the traces of the old houses, and they just continued what was once completely devastated and torn. These are the pictures. I took those pictures because I was fortunate enough to visit this area just before it got renovated. So these are a few images of how this place looked like. We can see remains of old mud houses, some stone walls completely deliberated. We can see that can you hear me? The fence that separates the Wadi Hanifa from the site itself. So Beit Isa in Arga is a compelling case in sustainable housing, emphasizing this critical role of heritage preservation. By integrating traditional construction practices with modern materials, the project not only maintains the physical integrity of the urban fabric, but also sustains the social practices inherent to the region. So the use of mud as a plastering materials here serves as a focal point for this discussion. You see here, there's an old map that Badr, this person, has digitized in 12 Hijri. So this was the old So this is an old map that was drawn, a croquis, as they say here, that show it's upside down because here in this map, the Wadi Hanifa, to match the GIS image, it should be so we see the names of all these families that used to live here. We see on top Isa, which is the name of the village today, Beit Isa, because this was his grandfather's name. So all the families used to have their small little houses here, and this was taken today by this person, Badr, and redrawn, digitized, and based on this, he recreated streets that existed in this cluster. So today, people come, people help. I don't think you can hear me. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you. So these are images of the site just before it started. They started work. We can see that many of the materials exist there. And lots of the old houses that were completely demolished still have the stone on the side. They still have the wood, the ethel wood, and that has been recycled and reused in the creation of the new structures. So here we have few details, few openings. It's an amazing place. It's an amazing space that people just loved visiting even before it got demolished. And these are images of some artisan that was brought from Yemen, people who understand the use of mud and understand the technique of mud. And they were brought, 7 of them actually, who were living there for a few months, and they were doing the mixes between the water, between the mud, between the straw, and applied on the walls. These are images of the site being restructured in order to take the extra pressure from the roofs. So I'm going to go quickly on these. We see here an image of an artisan trying to mix the straw with the mud, with the water, recreate this texture. The mud was brought from Wadi Hanifa, so it has exactly the same color of mud that was 100 years ago. So the use of locally sourced raw material, the mud, the clay, the straw, preferred building material, added regions. So important properties, the durability, the thermal insulation, the energy efficiency. Here are a few images solidifying the structure. Artisans really working very well, very small materials, hand materials, no big compressors, nothing to fragilize the structure. So everything was really slow. We can see things taking shape. Oh, sorry. So, no. Okay. So the spaces, the passages inside, the structure with the metal, very thin metal, just to support the roof, the recreation of the existing walls with the material that used to exist. Finally, a few images at night where we see some of the houses that still are not inhabited, but they were cleaned up, they were renovated, and now they serve as a background for events such as Eid al-Ta'sis or Eid al-Watani. Some events will take place here. I'm not promoting the events, but I just think that this project serves as an example for private initiatives. Today, although we acknowledge that events or projects like Diriyah or other projects in Riyadh are amazing and doing amazing work in just putting things together, but there are also some very important private initiatives in Riyadh, and those people are doing a lot of work. They spend so much effort, private money, you know, they are not getting funded. Just restoring and rehabilitating what they feel for them is heritage. And I think this is crucial, and that is so part of the Saudi culture, and this is something we feel every day, and we were coming here. So final images of how it looks today. And I want to give it back to Karine for final recommendations.
Okay, thank you, David. I think David has already started the conclusion. So to conclude, as the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is advancing towards achieving its Vision 2030 objectives, embracing mud as a process rather than merely a construction material opens the door to innovative approaches in urban planning and heritage conservation, as we have shown in our presentation. And as we have already argued, this perspective is deeply rooted in local culture, respects traditional heritage while encouraging a diversity of architectural expressions that avoid imposing a uniform style or material. So building on this, we advocate for the integration of private heritage preservation initiatives as vital context-specific endeavors that serve as carriers of local cultures, But of course, these initiatives must operate under the guidance of dedicated commissions tasked with regulating their implementation and ensuring compliance with applicable laws. More broadly, we advocate for a deeper exploration of local construction materials, first as building resources capable of addressing contemporary sustainability challenges, but even more as living materials that by embodying local cultures and fostering community engagement can facilitate a more authentic and community-driven approach to heritage preservation. Thank you.
We move to the second presentation by Danielle Mamari, Living Heritage Atlas, Beirut. So from Diriyah to Beirut.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. I think it was great the way that their presentation ended because it segues very well into my talk today, which is going to be about the Living Heritage Atlas Beirut project, a case study that looks at how we can use community engagement as well as data mapping in order to preserve and create platforms that preserve the living heritage of a region, for instance, such as these craftsmen that they were showing. So a little bit about, me. So I'm Daniela Mamari. I'm the lead researcher and project manager at the Future Heritage Lab. And a few months ago, I actually moved to Saudi Arabia. So I now live in Medina and I work in the industry as a design manager as well. So a little bit about how this project started. So first of all, it's important to know that it is a collaboration between the MIT Future Heritage Lab, which I've been working at for many years, which we use art and design in context of scarcity mostly, and see how we can integrate them in the community and use heritage to engage communities, work across borders, etc. in these contexts. And then we have the Civic Data Design Lab, headed by Dr. Sarah Williams, and they work on how can we use data for public good. So the context, that wasn't supposed to happen, okay? Okay, so unfortunately the context that we were working in was quite grim, but it was actually after the explosion that occurred in Beirut in August of 2020. So we were a group of architects, researchers, urban planners, and we were seeing how can we, in this moment, work on supporting the efforts on the ground. And what we realized was that actually, in the aftermath of the blast, there was a lot of money that came to support the material reconstruction of the buildings. But, and not just in this reconstruction process, but we also did a study to look at the, unfortunately, many previous reconstruction processes, and craftspeople were not really involved too much in the reconstruction efforts. And so we did some search, and we realized that a part of it was that they were actually obviously an informal network, so it was quite difficult to find these expertise when you needed them. So our project, the Living Heritage Atlas, is this design-based research project that looked at documenting the network of craftsmanship in the area affected by the blast. Not just the contemporary one, but also looking back in time to understand how did the different political situations, security issues affect the displacement of these craftsmen over time. So what we did, number one, we constructed an open access database of geolocated crafts workshops from as early as we could find. So talking from like the 1890s, of photos of marketplaces, etc., all the way to contemporary existing workshops in the areas affected by the blast. We also created kind of a connection between the physical and the digital through interactive installations. And we created a community engagement program where we did lots of talks, living heritage events, mapathons, etc., with the local community. So number one, it was very important through our data collection to ensure that whatever we were going to build was going to be open access and people were able to contribute to it. So we did a lot of interviews with stakeholders, particularly with entities that were dealing with the reconstruction process at the time and entities that support local craftsmen. We went one by one to these craftsmen. We did the holistic mapping activity with over 10 people who were working with us on the ground in Beirut. And we documented these crafts workshops. And of course, not to belittle, also we had over 600 archival entries. And in Lebanon, unfortunately, it's not very organized. So you have several entities that you need to go to. So whether it's universities, private collectors, etc. And we compiled this information one by one. And eventually, we were able to create a website. Is this playing? Okay. So this is a demo of the website. So this website, basically, we amassed all this different information, and we geolocated all these images. We decided to focus on images, but of course, this can expand to much more. So it can become an oral storytelling. It can become actually the process of how you build a certain element. It can be a video, etc. But basically, what we did was we mapped all these crafts workshops in the area. And we reached out to these craftsmen to also tell us if they would like their contact information to be displayed. That it did occur. So we received permissions from some of them. And this was very crucial in the aftermath of the blast because all the INGOs or other entities that were providing them with aid were able to actually do so because now they could contact them. So we also ensured that these are like crafts workshops and the archival images were mapped within the context which they were. So we did the geolocation of historic maps of what the streets used to look like, etc. So you are able to see the photo in the context or the street that it used to be on. So these are some of the images. For example, you see this from an Armenian newspaper archive. Our geographic extent was from the Beirut Central District to Burj Hamoud, which is outside of municipal Beirut, and it is known as an area where there is a strong migrant Armenian community historically that are well embedded in the Lebanese society, but that they bring with them their own crafts culture and different processes and practices. And you can see here on the website, even right now, you can download all this information. And you can also contribute. So for instance, if you have the picture of your grandfather's workshop, you can right now go on the website and add it to the database and help us grow together. So the second part of this was, okay, we have created this website, and now how do we ensure that this website remains alive and that people are using it and enjoying it and learning about it? So we designed a sticker intervention. It was like a small signage, and it came along with a whole cultural program that we designed in the city, including tours, etc., which we will see in the later slides. But basically, we put stickers all over the city along this map. And this map, what did it do? So these points were the different historical crafts workshops that used to exist there and don't anymore, or crafts workshops that have existed, for instance, for 100 years or 70 years in the Beiruti capital. And so we plastered them all over the city according to the map. And when you went there, you could use your phone and scan the code and send, let's say, here 37EN or Arabic, and you receive a photo with an accompanying story of the craftsman or the crafts workshop that is located exactly where you are standing. So for instance, during one of the tours, what happened was the grandkids of the person in the photo saw like a photo of their grandpa when he was young working in the workshop. So it becomes like an interactive way to learn about this hidden history and reveal it, sort of. And then obviously what I was talking about, this cultural program. So it was very important that through this project, we make sure to combine all these different stakeholders to chat together, to ensure that everybody's cooperating, that there is data sharing between them, and to make sure that we are advancing this much needed dialogue between the entities. So we did not just this, but also reached out to the community to participate with us. Okay, my finger is very heavy on the thing. Okay, so we did posters and we plastered them all over the city, and it was the whole program. And the people who joined us on craft workshop tours, archival workshop tours, the Living Heritage Atlas event, and the Mapathon, they received a mobile kit that had a map and, for example, like pens, and they went, when we were walking together, they could also help us add maybe new points that we hadn't noticed, etc. So we went we selected certain craftsmen and we created paths, and we went and saw how they are doing their craft. So all the different process, they walked us through it, what they were inspired by, etc. So some of them, for example, have more like traditional type of techniques, and others have engaged with contemporary and have created something very unique as well. So these are some of the craftsmen that we visited. And then we created this Living Heritage Atlas event. And the point of this event was, again, to create a dialogue. We selected a very symbolic location. It was called the Abroyan factory. It's one of the first factories that was employing over hundreds of artisans in this area of Burj Hammoud. And we gave each person a role. So everybody who was attending the event was either a craftsman, was somebody who was contributing data to us, and we asked them to bring what we termed the living heritage item. So whether it was, let's say, a book about reconstruction or guidelines on how to reconstruct historic walls with lime and plaster, or whether it was, for instance, a picture of their grandpa, or whether it was the tools that they use. So different elements. And we took, we scanned them, or we took like images of them, and we integrated them within our archive. And we did a lot of discussions with actors who are on the ground. So we wanted to ensure that we are building on whatever is there. So everybody from, for instance, Instagram influencer who has like a page dedicated to crafts, all the way to very established entities, all the way to Nahnu, all the way to the different entities that are there. And we also looked at the importance of this documentation. We looked at how can we help develop the policies and strengthen the current situation of these artisans. And artisans were part of the discussion, the syndicate, so there were a lot of entities that are interested in that. And there was then also the big funders, so the UNESCO and the UN Habitat, who were actually providing funding at the time to the cultural and creative spaces. So these are some images from the event. And the biggest and most fun part also was what we did was we have all our data and we printed it on really, really big maps, and we placed it in this huge factory, and which was on the ground floor. And we invited all the local community, elder people, whoever was present, to come in and help us also add to this database together. So this, for instance, Wissam Houri, this is his son, would be the 4th generation leather craftsman who makes horse saddles. So like very specific, but also very beautiful to see like all the intergenerational aspects of these traditions and practices being moved forward. Do I still have time? I can play a video. Yeah. Okay. So this is a video actually that we did. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to allow you to enjoy a 2-minute video that's also like a summary of this project. There's no sound. It's okay, we can skip it if there's no sound. In any case, I thought this case study particularly would be interesting in the context that we are in right now. because there's a lot of this study and this case study can be done in so many different contexts, and intangible heritage is very important to preserve it. And I think here there is a lot of effort that's already being done on intangible cultural practices and how do you preserve them. But also there's that second element of how do I involve the community and make sure that they know about this heritage and make sure to safeguard it for future generation in a way that's entertaining and exciting and informative. And so I believe like community engagement is very important in this regard. And these kind of projects can also expand very much to include different elements of building practices. There's something also about the spatialization of this project. For instance, we were talking this morning with several speakers about the nomadic tribes and their movement through time. So how do you also follow these stories and try to spatialize them, spatialize these intangible cultural practices? So thank you very much. I think I will end my presentation here. Okay.
Daniela. Before we take audience questions, maybe I have a couple of questions for Daniela, since you just finished, and Rula and Karine. Daniela, first question to come to mind is, how do you feel, if you have to summarize the application fields of archiving this heritage, how do you feel it helps architects, planners, even real estate developers develop better cities, better neighborhoods? If you had to summarize maybe a couple of points on the advantages of using that.
Of course. Hello? Okay. Of course, when you have a database or you are able to work with this specialist, which is the craftsman actually, who knows his material and who knows how to build with it, and who historically also has known so many different applications of it, it directly makes it a more intimate experience where you feel like he really knows how to manipulate this material and really knows its limits and how you can experience it in a more authentic way. So I feel like it does add a layer of authenticity, perhaps, to contemporary architecture. Like right now, we are all seeing this move towards, for example, the vernacular, etc. Yeah. But also in our study, we look at not just the historical, maybe the traditional building craft that we're thinking about, the guy who is doing mosaic or whatever. No, we are also talking about the carpenter, who might also be doing a very modern chair, etc. But you are working with this person who really is a master of their craft, and it helps add also another layer to it, so it's not so cookie cutter perhaps, or it's more inspired by the local community, etc. I hope that answers.
Yeah, thank you. Final question maybe for Rula and Karine and myself. After reviewing mud and its applications and its symbiotics, and where do you feel in today's changing lifestyles and changing societies? People have different needs, have different spaces they dream of, different sizes of homes. How do you feel, and where do you see the limitation of using mud as a construction material, amongst other things?
David, I'm not sure if I can answer your question directly, but I think that one of the intersections between our work and Daniela's work is basically the way we try to empower the community. And engaging the community itself is a big chunk of preserving the past, but also engaging in the future. So I think, so to go back to mud, engaging with mud or engaging with a local material will engage with people who has the knowledge about their land, which means their past, the craftsmanship that were there, and the savoir-faire in that area, and that will allow them to actually remodel it, work with it, and tailor it for modern and future ways of life and maybe needs. And I think that this is really the most important thing. So rather than looking at preservation as a thematic proposed to the community by the state or the authorities or those who are interested in that theme, empowering the community and engaging them in that work would actually make sure that this will be a sustainable strategy in the future, irrespective of the little technicalities and of some of the gaps. So it's a way, it's an informal way for preservation. It's a new way of looking at preservation that is maybe not very traditional, but that can ensure in a way a sustainable approach to that, and that is also locally based, that is pretty much based on the locality, and therefore it can travel differently and in different ways and shapes everywhere.
Absolutely. Karim, maybe a few words?
No, I don't have anything to add. Thanks, Steve.
We can take your questions if you wish. We still have 10 minutes or 7 minutes.
Thank you very much. It is just an open question to everybody because I find it really fascinating. Of course, there's tons of wonderful initiatives to support, to document, to stimulate and all that. But when it comes to sustainability, how to make sure that these crafts actually continue, and this is when you're getting into the economics of it all. Because obviously what makes those crafts special to this region is because they were able to operate within the particular economic setup, right? They would use the resources they had access to and deliver it. So how do we move from these wonderful, documenting initiatives to educational apprenticeship and actual inclusion into the whole economic cycle, without which, these things might not survive?
I think it's a question for both lecturers. Would you like to start, Daniela?
Okay. So definitely that's the million-dollar question in this field in general. Like, how do you actually ensure that it is a sustainable profession to begin with, and that I've spoken to so many craftsmen and they don't want their kids to do it because they know it's not very profitable. So I think in that scenario, it depends on the context that you're in and how much power you have and to be able to enact policies that support them. For instance, in the context of Lebanon, I believe this was helpful because I know that eventually whoever needed a carpenter, whoever needed a different type of craft, was able to find them. Like, we are at the first step, and the first step is if you need this kind of professional, you know where to find them. So we were still at that stage, and of course there is a lot of this was a tricky question while we were doing the research, but do we want to partner with designers, for example? And we saw a lot of examples of where, let's say, a furniture designer would employ certain craftspeople and not pay them well and things like that. So maybe if we have a way to regulate that and, make it a more seamless experience, there are ways to make it economically viable. But I also think there's ideas of matching people, for example, to the crafts. Like, there's a lot that can be done, but I personally, I'm not an economist. I cannot speak to the, let's say, viability economically on the level of a government or let's say city. But there is a lot that can be done in the beginning stages through these type of interactive platforms, through educating people and through making sure that they start to favor these craftsmen or understand the value of why should I work with them.
If I may, I would like to also comment on that. Thank you for raising this question. I do agree with Danielle a lot about the different contexts and the different responses that may be needed in this case in order to make these crafts or the preservation kind of sustainable economically. I do want to highlight some of the conclusions of our paper whereby we call for a governmental framework that would help and that would regulate private initiatives such as these, because well, regulating them would make sure and ensure that the quality would be acceptable and good, but also in case there are any needs for subsidies. And I think that there are issues that are very much important and worth subsidizing. And depending on the agenda of every government or every area or every state, I think that, we should be seeking subsidy from the government. Although we shed the light on the importance of private initiatives in preservation, I think we will be very mistaken if we think that the private sector alone can ensure the preservation of national heritage. Without a solid state and a solid agenda and putting forward these issues, there will not be solid or substantial national preservation. And I think that identity is something that is very much related to state vision and state support. So subsidy, definitely all the time welcome, and in different contexts it can come in different ways.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A heartfelt thank you to our esteemed speakers for sharing their valuable insights and expertise on preserving and documenting cultural heritage. Thank you.
Thank you.
The first day of the Diriyah Global Seminar comes to a close, marked by discussion that transcended boundaries and illuminated minds with creativity and profound perspectives. Tomorrow, the seminar will continue with a renewed passion, where ambition guides us and renewal is our pledge. From the heart of Diriyah, history is being written. Thank you. See you tomorrow. يعطيكم العافية.